This is session C for Guaranteed Admissions Program, or the GAP program, as many of you might know it as. My name is Gracie Grossman, and I am an admissions counselor with Washington State University. But today I will be representing all 6 schools that are a part of the GAP program, talking a little bit about each of the schools and then answering questions about the GAP program, the criteria we're looking for, and just overall how that program works. We'll go through some information on GAP, go through each of the schools, and then at the end, we'll do a Q&A. I'll go through some of the more frequently asked questions that we have, but afterwards, I will open it up to questions from you guys. You can either unmute yourself or throw the questions in the chat. Feel free to throw questions in the chat as I go. I'll just answer them towards the end of our session here. Session goes until 8:25. Before we get started, just want to share I am a counselor for Washington State University only. So we're lucky enough to have slides from all 6 schools within the GAP program, and they shared information that I'm able to share with you. But if you have any super specific questions regarding one of the other 5 schools, I might not be able to answer that specifically, but I can connect you with one of their admissions counselors. But mainly I'm here to speak about kind of the GAP program as a whole, as all of us in this program do have the same things that we're looking for in terms of what qualifies you for guaranteed admission. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, if you aren't familiar at all at what the GAP program is, GAP stands for Guaranteed Admissions Program. You might also see it as WAGAP, WAGAP, so the Washington Guaranteed Admissions Program. It goes by both names, so you might see it depending on your school or where you're getting the handout from. But what the GAP program is it is a data sharing partnership with Washington schools, districts, high schools that offers guaranteed admission to 6 different Washington colleges if the students are meeting a certain criteria. To utilize the GAP program, it's just kind of 3 main things. First, you want to make sure you opt into that GAP program through your high school. So usually junior year, your high school will either send home a paper, an email, something where you are able to opt into the GAP program. Usually most students opt in, only like 4 or 5% choose to opt out because it is an optional program, but most students choose to opt in, and then that shares information with us. And then on the back end, us as college counselors can see that you are a part of guaranteed admission. So there's nothing special you need to do on the application or anything you need to tell us. We already have that information on our end if you've opted in. Next, you need to make sure that you're meeting the guaranteed admission requirements in order to receive that guaranteed admission. And we'll go through that here in depth so you know exactly what I mean when I say GAP requirements. And then lastly, you'll just go through the application process as normal. Being in the guaranteed admission program doesn't change anything about when you apply or how you apply. It's mainly just to give you a peace of mind to know that you're meeting the criteria and you will be accepted. It's kind of like an easy button. Hey, I know I can get into these schools, so I don't have to apply to extra safety schools or things like that. If I'm in guaranteed admission program, I can be admitted to these 6 schools that we're about to get into here. So first up, obviously going to talk about Washington State. We are a rural, large college located in Pullman, have about 19,000 students, and it is a very traditional college experience. We have about 450 clubs and organizations, Division I athletics, 16 different residence halls because we do follow that first year Washington live-in requirement for freshman students. We have about 200 different majors. This can range from agriculture, business, animal science, criminal justice, apparel design, nursing, architecture, tons and tons of options to study. We also have pre-med, pre-law, pre-vet, things like that. Our fall application deadline for seniors is going to be March 31st, and then our confirmation deadline is that traditional May 1st. Next school that is a part of the guaranteed admissions program is going to be Western Washington University. Their main campus is located in Bellingham, Washington, so about 90 minutes from Seattle. They have about 14,000 students, 13,000 of those being undergraduate students, and then about 200 clubs. And then at a 3.0 and above, you're qualifying for merit scholarships. And then popular majors that they have are going to be psychology, education, business, computer science, and then different pre-professional programs as well, like I mentioned with WSU. Third college that participates in guaranteed admission is going to be Central Washington University. Their main campus is located in Ellensburg, Washington. They have about 135 different majors, a 15-to-1 student to faculty ratio. Some popular majors that they have are going to be business, music, education. As far as the guaranteed admission program, this criteria is going to look for the same for all schools. And again, we're going to get into that after we're done talking about the individual colleges. But with that 3.0 indicators met, you have guaranteed admission at Central, and they do not require a personal statement in their application, which is a plus. About 38% of first-year students identify as a person of color, about 100 different student clubs and organizations, and then 500 plus different scholarships and types of waivers. Next up, we have Eastern Washington. That's a part of the guaranteed admissions program. Their main campus is located in Cheney, Washington, about 120 different majors, popular ones being psychology, nursing, cyber operations. They have a really cool chart here of all the in-state tuition and fees, and they actually have the lowest in-state tuition and fees, which is super cool. As far as enrollment goes, they have just under 11,000 for fall 2023 enrollment. About 50% of their students had job lined up prior to graduation, a 20-to-1 student to faculty ratio, and 50% of their students will graduate debt-free. Next up, we have University of Washington Tacoma. It is important to note that University of Washington Seattle and University of Washington Bothell are not members of the guaranteed admission program. Only University of Washington Tacoma is. A little bit about UW Tacoma, a little under 5,000 students. We have tuition listed here in the upper right-hand corner. And then their popular majors are going to be computer science, psychology, biomedical science, business administration, and then some fun facts down here at the bottom as well for you. Lastly, we have Evergreen State College. This is a little different than the other four-year publics that we mentioned because they are more of an alternative four-year college where students aren't declaring a specific major, but they're more creating their own paths and studying a variety of different subjects. Some popular fields of study going to be psychology, environmental science, visual art, business. They're located in Olympia, Washington, and they're one of the few schools that will still accept ACT and SAT scores. You have the option in their application to either do an essay or submit those test scores. So those were the 6 Washington colleges that participate in the guaranteed admissions program. And now we're going to get into the requirements that offer you guaranteed admission and make you eligible for GAP. So first is going to be that 3.0 cumulative GPA. You need to earn and maintain that 3.0, and that is an unweighted GPA. And then you also need to make sure that you are meeting CATR requirements. If you don't know what CATRs are, it's just a fancy way to say the Washington kind of state college requirements. Acronym stands for College Academic Distribution Requirements. So kind of a mouthful. There's a website down at the bottom of the screen here that'll go fully in depth on what exactly CATR requirements look like, down to the types of science classes, the types of math classes, substitutions, different combinations of classes you can take to make sure that you're meeting the CATR requirements. But if your high school guidance counselor knows that you want to attend a four-year university, they will most likely make sure that you are meeting these CATR requirements because all of us do require that they are met. To sum up CATRs, it's basically 4 years of English, 3 years of math, plus an additional math-based senior year class, 3 years of science, 3 years of social science, and then 2 years of a world or foreign language, and then 1 year of fine arts. Different colleges have different policies on how they review caters. Some are a little bit more lenient, where you might be able to be missing a cater, or maybe you only need 3 years of math instead of that additional senior math. But overall, if you want to make sure that you have guaranteed admission to all 6 of these schools, you want to make sure that you're meeting these cater requirements. If you have specific questions about how a school reviews caters, always encourage you to reach out to your admissions counselor. But I will say, especially for WSU, English, math, and science are super important to us. You have to be meeting those cater requirements. We don't allow leniency with that. So again, overall, if you want to make sure that you're getting guaranteed admission, it is best to make sure that you are just meeting cater requirements to its fullest potential. Some frequently asked questions that we get about the GAP program. First is, do I still have to apply? Do I have to do anything special? And once you opt in, really, you're just going to participate in that application process as normal. Again, it's just giving you that peace of mind that you are going to receive that acceptance letter. You can apply through the Common App or through our in-house website, and guaranteed admission will still apply to you. Again, we have it marked internally on the college and university side. Unofficial transcripts are something we need in addition to your college application. That's how we're checking to see if you have the 3.0, and we're checking to see if you're meeting those cater requirements. A lot of high schools will automatically send out transcripts for GAP students to the GAP schools, but you should always be checking with your counselor to make sure your transcripts are going to the colleges that you applied for. Otherwise, it's going to delay your application decision and that whole timeline. You still want to pay that application fee or request a fee waiver. Different schools do it different way, but there should be instructions for how to do that through each of our colleges' applications. And then lastly, just any additional materials that are needed for the application process. Many of us now do not require test scores or won't even consider test scores for admission, but it's always good to check. Like I said, with Evergreen State College, they have the option for either submitting test scores or submitting an essay. So it's always good to just check, read through application requirements, and see what you need to send in order to make sure that your application is complete. The second most asked question we get is, what if I'm not in the guaranteed admission program? What if I'm right below that 3.0? Am I still able to apply to these 6 universities? And the answer is absolutely yes. All of us are able to accept students below a 3.0. It just doesn't come at that guaranteed level. So you're not in the GAP program, you don't have guaranteed admission, but that doesn't mean you can't apply and be accepted. So we still encourage students to apply. If they're not quite at that 3.0 threshold, that's okay. Third, this is a big one, is guaranteed admission for the major. So if I am a computer science major and I have guaranteed admissions, does that guarantee me into my major choice? And in a nutshell, the answer is no. Guaranteed admission is for the university at general. If your school and your major requires a separate application process for that major, that is not included in guaranteed admission, and that is not guaranteed. You will still have to go through that process with the college. Usually that's not something you have to worry about at the time of high school senior application. Most schools in the GAP program have it. So if your major does need a separate application, it's usually in your sophomore year or second year of college. It's not something you have to worry about right now. And again, it is not a part of guaranteed admission. Guaranteed admission is just for the university in general, not specific academic programs if they are capacity constrained. Fourth question we get a lot is, what is the recommended amount of Running Start classes, AP classes, IB honors classes, any of those above and beyond type classes? And the answer is, it really just depends. Those are great, but there's not a magic number that you need in order to be admitted. Overall, we just want to make sure that you are doing well, succeeding, and meeting admission requirement. So if you're able to take Running Start and AP classes and get that college credit while earning college credit and well-being in high school, that's awesome. But if taking those classes are really hard and it's gonna make your GPA drop and you're not gonna be able to pass them, they're not needed in order to be admitted. So it's really just a case-by-case situation per student. And then lastly, you can apply to multiple guaranteed admission schools. So you can apply to WSU and Western, you can apply to Eastern and Central, you can apply to all 6 of us or just one of us. You can have guaranteed admission through all the schools, and you would still go through and confirm your admission as normal. You'd get your acceptance letter and then be able to decide, yes, I want to attend this school, or no, I don't. You're not being locked into the school just by applying through the GAP program. That's the overall review of GAP program, schools in it, kind of what it's about. I already have some questions coming in through the chat, so I'll go ahead and start answering those. But if you have more questions, feel free to throw them in, and I'll just kind of try and go through them in chronological order. So it looks like first question we have here, if you're in the GAP program, you can get into all 6 schools, but not all of the schools mentioned. So GAP program, those admissions requirements I just went through apply to all 6 of the schools. So Central, Eastern, Evergreen, University of Washington-Tacoma, Washington State, Western, all the schools I just went through, you can apply and get into any of those schools. You're not limited to just applying to one GAP school. And if you're meeting the 3.0 and you're meeting the CATRs, if you apply to one and get admitted, you're probably going to be admitted to the others because we all have that same kind of criteria. Hope that answers that question. If not, put another one in the chat and I will try and clarify better. Next question is, are these rolling admission, or what is the deadline? Most of the schools in the GAP program do operate on rolling admission. I know Western does, Central does, Washington State does. I think the majority of us in the GAP program do, but always check with the specific admissions counselor or check on the college's website. There's not a specific guaranteed admissions program deadline. It'll just be the traditional deadline. So for example, Washington State's is March 31st. So that is when you need to apply by. I think Western's is January 31st. So that's when you need to apply by for Western. It's just the traditional application process for that school, whatever that process is. You just know that you're going to be admitted through this program. Does American Sign Language meet the world language requirement for CATR? Yes, it does. That does meet CATR requirements. If you go to the website, it'll list all of the world language requirements that are accepted, but foreign language, American Sign Language, that's acceptable. Looks like those are all the questions I see now. You can also feel free to unmute if you have a question, throw another one in the chat, but if you've gotten all the information that you came for and you're happy with what you know about the GAP program, feel free to head on out. Thank you so much for coming. I will hang out here and continue to answer questions in the chat until we don't have any more. If you are in the GAP program and you apply to University of Washington-Tacoma, but you can't apply to Bothell or Seattle, Bothell and Seattle are not in the GAP program. So you would not have guaranteed admission at Bothell or Seattle, just through Tacoma. I'm not sure in their system how it works, if you're able to apply to multiple University of Washington schools at the same time, or if you can only apply to one, you would have to reach out to a University of Washington counselor to know that. Tacoma is the only one included in guaranteed admission. Connect with their counselor to see if you can apply to multiple UW campuses at once or not. At WSU, you can only apply to one campus at a time, so I'm not sure if that would be the same for University of Washington. For the world language requirement, is it 2 years or 2 credits? Usually a credit is going to be equivalent to a year. So when we say 2 years, we usually mean 2 full credits. If your high school calculates that differently, I would connect with your counselor to see what that means for you. But usually when we say 2 credits, it's 2 years, 2 years is 2 credits. That's how it comes across on most transcripts.
Okay, thank you.
And also if you take, if you speak a foreign language at home, if you take one of the proficiency exams, those can be used in place of that foreign language requirement. We all accept that.
Exactly. That's what she did when she was in 9th grade.
Yep.
So I want to, yeah.
Yep, so
Awesome.
that would be accepted, absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Of course. Feel free to throw more questions in the chat, unmute yourself, or if you've got the information you need, thank you for coming, you're free to head out. I'll give it another minute or two, but if we don't have any more questions, we'll go ahead and end the meeting. Again, thank you so much. And if you need to connect outside of this, you can always reach out to myself or the admissions counselors from the other schools as well.